My neighbor invited me to their place. You won't believe what transpired. There are instances in life when everything changes, when the earth beneath you doesn't merely shake, it splits apart. Like a truth you've held on to finally choosing to reveal itself. That's how it felt when Sarah welcomed me into her home that day. We had known each other for what felt like an eternity. Our families were tight-knit during our childhood, sharing weekends at the lake, with our parents chuckling at the same jokes. While the aroma of grilled burgers and freshly cut grass lingered in the atmosphere. I recall the way the sunlight filtered through the trees, enveloping everything in a warm, golden glow. Life seemed so uncomplicated back then, however, that was prior to the passage of all those years. Before distance and time left their imprint. Transforming what was once effortless into something strange. We had both aged, both evolved, yet Sarah had consistently been present, merely a street away. I could gaze out my window and behold her house, with its weathered shutters and ivy climbing up the side, just as it had been since our childhood. Each time I laid eyes on it, she came to mind. I reminisced about her laughter, the way her eyes sparkled when she spoke of her passions, the warmth she always exuded. That day she called me, saying, "I'm home, you know." Her voice coming through the phone, gentle yet tinged with an emotion I couldn't quite identify. I had been preoccupied with life, work, and all the small distractions that often kept us apart from those who truly matter. However, when Sarah reached out, I acted without a moment's pause. I took my keys and stepped out of my house. My mind clear and focused. Upon arriving, I noticed her front door was ajar, and a delightful aroma, perhaps cinnamon or vanilla, wafted out to welcome me. It enveloped me in warmth and security. Akin to the embrace of a comforting hug, Sarah was waiting just inside, standing there with that familiar smile that made everything feel like it would be okay. "You're early," she said, stepping aside to let me in. Yet, there was an unmistakable quality about her. There was an unexpressed quality in her movements. A lingering intensity in the way she maintained her gaze just a fraction longer than usual. I sensed it in the air between us, dense like a secret on the verge of revelation. I trailed behind her down the hallway, observing how her home felt more subdued than normal. The sound of my footsteps reverberated, despite the space not being large or cavernous. It was simply the sensation of it. It felt as if we were both anticipating something, yet neither of us dared to voice it. "You can sit in the living room," Sarah suggested, her tone slightly elevated. "I'll return shortly." I nodded, choosing not to question anything at this moment. The living room exuded warmth, adorned with bookshelves that embraced the walls, while a duo of vintage armchairs sat invitingly before the crackling fireplace. It felt exactly as it always had, everything felt as it ought to. Save for that thread of tension weaving through the air, a current I couldn't dismiss. I sank into one of the chairs, the well-worn. The leather creaked beneath me as I waited. Sarah's footsteps became quieter, and I couldn't help but observe how much more intentional they felt at that moment. I found myself grappling with an unsettling sense that a shift was imminent. Yet I couldn't dispel it, not with. Her voice echoed in my thoughts, that gentle, tentative tone from our conversation, as if she were mustering the bravery for something significant. When she returned, she didn't take a seat opposite me like she usually did. Instead, she lingered in the doorway to the hallway, her gaze fixed on me. Lips slightly parted as if she yearned to speak but struggled to find the right words. "Sarah?" I inquired, my voice barely above a whisper. I found myself uncertain whether I was inquiring about her thoughts, or if I found myself pondering as she took a deliberate step forward. Her hand grazing the doorframe before it gently fell to her side. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice barely above a murmur. Could sense the heaviness of it then. Something within me urged me to rise, to bridge the distance between us, yet I remained still. I remained anchored to the chair, observing her. For a moment, she was silent. Her gaze fell to the ground, and I noticed her breath hitch in her chest, as if she were searching for the strength within herself to proceed. At last, she raised her gaze, and as our eyes locked, a realization washed over me. I love you, she confessed, her voice quivering just a bit, though not out of fear. It felt as if it had been restrained for such an extended period that it simply flowed away, liberated and unconfined. I have cherished you for an eternity, and I can no longer conceal my feelings. I found myself questioning whether I was even inhaling or exhaling. My heart felt as if it had ceased to exist. Or perhaps it was racing so rapidly that it couldn't keep pace with the truth of her words. Sarah was my best friend, the one who had always stood by me. Even when life tried to take us down separate paths. She stood before me, her eyes brimming with a vulnerability I hadn't encountered in years, and the air between us buzzed with an unfamiliar energy. Something electric. I found myself at a loss for words for what felt like an eternity. The space seemed inadequate for all that was unfolding. All I could do was observe her, absorbing the image of her. Her hand fidgeting with the hem of her shirt, the manner in which her shoulders. She was tense, as if bracing herself for my rejection, but I didn't turn her away. I was unable to. For an extended period, there existed nothing but silence between us. I could hear the steady rhythm of my breathing, the gentle hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. The soft creak of the old floorboards beneath me. The floorboards creaked softly beneath Sarah's feet. However, nothing more, none at all. No explanations. The heavy weight of her confession lingered in the air, a cloud that was impossible to ignore. I couldn't tell how long it lasted, but in that moment, I felt as if I were suspended in time. I wanted to express my thoughts, to share with her that she had been on my mind as well, that I had been contemplating our relationship, how I had always sensed something deeper than mere friendship. Yet fear held me back, fearful that if I voiced it, everything would crumble into something unreal. I was hesitant to spoil it, not after all that we had experienced together. As the seconds elongated, the fear began to dissipate, giving way to a serene acceptance that this moment, this feeling, was more genuine than anything else. Finally, I shattered the silence. Sarah, my voice trembled, scarcely rising above a whisper. I was at a complete loss for words, yet, she remained there, her hands clasped in front of her, as if she were striving to maintain her composure. I could see her vulnerability, the way she felt so exposed, and it pained me that I hadn't found the words to express my thoughts earlier. I find myself at a loss for words, she swallowed, her chest rising and falling with every breath. You don't have to say anything, she whispered softly. I simply wanted you to be aware. Her words struck me deeply. A burden I hadn't known I was shouldering. And I felt it, this profound, undeniable pull, something within me that had always existed, hidden beneath years of routine, of casual friendship. Of overlooking what we both had understood. But had not voiced it. It was genuine. It was a chilling moment. I rose gradually, and she remained steadfast, not retreating. Instead, she moved nearer to me, her gaze gentle and probing. My heart pounded in my chest, a wild tempo that I couldn't rein in. But I couldn't hold back either. Sarah, I repeated, and this time there was a fresh conviction in my tone. I believe I have feelings for you as well. It seemed as though time itself came to a halt the moment I uttered those words. When the words slipped from my lips, they lingered in the air between us, as if they were the sole truth that had ever held significance. Her eyes searched mine, wide and filled with hope, and then, in an instant, she stepped forward, closing the tiny gap that separates us. I remained still, didn't draw back. I had no desire to. I couldn't. She was so close now that I could feel the warmth radiating from her skin, the subtle quiver in her breath as she exhaled. Her gaze held an intensity, a blend of tenderness and longing. As if she were poised for me to take the first step, to reveal that what we were experiencing, what we were sharing, was not a mistake. There was no need for contemplation. I was certain about my desires, about what we both were essential. My hand brushed against her cheek, and I could sense the gentle warmth of her skin beneath my fingertips. She shut her eyes at the caress, and for an instant, all else faded away. It was merely The two of us, enveloped in this intimate, sacred space, felt as if nothing else existed. I leaned in. My lips grazing hers, the kiss gentle at first, hesitant, as if we were both exploring the depths, wary of losing ourselves in something beyond our grasp. However, it grew more profound. And everything transformed. The kiss intensified, filled with a sense of urgency and longing, as if we had been waiting an eternity to finally breathe together. Her hands found their way to my back, drawing me nearer, and I could feel the warmth of her body melding with mine. My heart raced in my chest, so intensely that I was convinced she could hear it, yet, in that instant, nothing else held significance. There existed neither a past nor a fear, nor any trace of hesitation. It was just Sarah and me, caught in a raw, unspoken connection. She pulled away slightly to catch her breath, and when she looked at me, her eyes were dark, brimming with emotion, filled with unspoken words. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered, her voice trembling, revealing her lingering uncertainty, a need for reassurance that we weren't merely two souls adrift in the moment. I nodded. "I have never been more certain of anything in my life." She smiled then, a small, hesitant smile, yet there was an essence in it that caused my chest to tighten with an emotion I couldn't quite identify. It was a sense of liberation. It was love. It was trust, pure and simple, as she grasped my hand and guided me down the hallway, past the framed memories on the walls, past the faded rugs, to the door at the end. I hadn't stepped into her bedroom in years, not since our childhood days, when we would play pretend, weaving tales and sharing laughter late into the night. However, this was unlike anything else. This was not a game, this was tangible, and it seemed as though everything was on the brink of transformation. She paused before the door, her fingers poised just above the doorknob. Then she gazed at me, her eyes probing once again, as if seeking my consent. I felt no need to utter a word. I simply nodded, and she offered another smile before turning the handle. The door creaked open, and the gentle light from the window poured into the room, creating elongated shadows that danced across the floor. It was tranquil in this space, as if the outside world had faded away. "Do you want to?" she inquired gently, her voice barely above a whisper, as though the very question held a sanctity that demanded reverence. I hesitated before responding. I just took a step forward, and as I crossed the threshold, I sensed a change stirring within me. The room lay still, save for the rhythm of our breaths. And I realized this marked the start of something neither of us had anticipated, yet both had longed for. The instant the door clicked shut behind us, I sensed the world compress into the space we shared, just the two of us, poised at the brink of something mysterious yet unmistakable. The heaviness of the silence felt nearly suffocating. Yet it brimmed with a profound understanding that only the strongest bonds can provide. Words were unnecessary at this moment. The atmosphere surrounding us was laden with the weight of our shared history, friends, confidants, two souls intertwined in ways that eluded others. Sarah pivoted towards me, her fingers grazing the edge of the bedpost, and in that moment, I perceived her as something beyond just the girl from across the street. She had transformed from merely being my childhood companion, the one with whom I had shared laughter and disputes, the keeper of my secrets and dreams. In this moment, she transcended everything. She was the one who had bared her heart, the one who had unlocked the entrance to an unforeseen journey for both of us. The woman gazing at me now had a soft yet probing look. I inhaled deeply and closed the distance between us. My hands quivered ever so slightly as I extended them once more to caress her face. This time, there was a clear resolve. There is no doubt. There was only the quiet certainty that I desired this. Desired her. I could see a familiar longing in her eyes, yet there was an additional layer beneath the surface. Terror, not of what was about to unfold, but of losing what we possessed. Of allowing this moment to fade, yet I was determined not to let that occur, not this time. Without uttering a word, I cradled her face in my hands, my thumbs softly gliding along the contour of her cheek. She leaned into my touch, her eyes fluttering closed as though she were relishing the delicate bond between us. In that instant, it dawned on me that every year we had shared as friends had culminated in this very moment. There was no longer any room for doubt, no more hesitation. This was it. This was the truth that had always lingered, hidden just below the surface of our friendship. Sarah reached up to touch my wrist, her fingers gentle and tentative. Yet there was a subtle power in the way she grasped my arm. She remained close. She drew me nearer. I could sense the warmth of her breath against my skin, the gentle rise and fall of her chest with each soft exhale. "I don't want this to ruin us," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It was a revelation. A raw honesty that resonated with the same dread I had been holding on to. The apprehension that our impending actions, the revelations we were on the brink of sharing, could alter everything. I leaned closer, my lips gently grazing her forehead, attempting to express all that remained unspoken in that fleeting moment. I drew back slightly to meet her gaze, to offer her comfort. To calm my own fears. "We're not destroying anything," I whispered. "We are simply progressing onward. We have always been by each other's side, Sarah. Just because things change doesn't mean we lose what we have. We remain ourselves." She smiled at that, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears, and I could see the weight of her emotions. Of everything she'd been holding onto for so long, she was trembling now, just slightly, but there was no doubt in my mind that she experienced the same magnetic pull I did. We had transcended the confines of our shared history. We were two souls embarking on an uncharted journey, one that brimmed with possibilities beyond our wildest dreams. I kissed her. Once more. This time with greater intention, with heightened urgency. The kiss enveloped us, more intense this time, as if our bodies were narrating the tales we had yet to articulate. All those years of friendship, of yearning, of missed moments and untraveled paths, now converge in this singular, undeniable moment. Her hands found their way to the back of my neck, drawing me nearer, as though she feared I might vanish into thin air. But I wasn't going anywhere. We moved together, slowly at first, as if we were still testing the waters. Still trying to gauge what this new chapter would mean. As her fingers traced the edge of my shirt, pulling it over my head, the world beyond this room faded away completely. It was just Sarah and I, accompanied by the soft cadence of our bodies discovering their own rhythm. When she kissed me again, it felt different, familiar yet somehow fresh. There was no further inquiry, no lingering doubt. We were both here, completely engaged, experiencing this moment in the most personal way. I allowed my fingers to glide across her skin, savoring the silkiness of her arms, and the gentle arch of her back. Her breath caught as I reached for her, and I understood that this moment transcended mere physical proximity. It was about the emotional connection, the trust, the years of friendship and unspoken love that had led to this moment. As the minutes stretched on, we both became more certain. We advanced side by side, enveloped in a serene comprehension, an implicit vow that we were both prepared for whatever this fresh bond, this new link, would unveil. All fears and doubts had vanished. It was just the two of us in this moment, allowing ourselves to be open, allowing ourselves to feel. It was an unexpected turn of events, something we had both longed for in silence. As it came to an end and the world resumed its usual pace, we found ourselves in the stillness of her room, entwined in the gentle embrace of the sheets. She rested her head on my chest, her fingers tracing idle patterns across my skin. The atmosphere was thick with the significance of our shared moments, yet there was an absence of awkwardness, an absence of regret. Just tranquility. Only the feeling that we were exactly where we needed to be. "I don't know what comes next," Sarah murmured, her voice barely audible against the silence of the room. I smiled. Gently. My fingers gliding through her hair. "Neither do I said, my voice calm and unwavering. "However, I am confident that we will find a solution." In unison, and that was the reality. We lacked all the answers, and the future remained as uncertain as it had always been. Yet, with her beside me, the world felt more within reach, brimming with potential. We had consistently supported one another. And now, we had become something deeper, something neither of us had anticipated yet both of us craved, while the outside world could simply pause. In that moment, there existed only Sarah, accompanied by a profound realization that everything had transformed, yet simultaneously, nothing had altered in the slightest.